Aphoristic appendage to On Truthtelling. 51 to 100. 51. Most people would prefer to judge and condemn the moral failings of others rather than to understand them. And this for the reason that they see any attempt to understand them as an attempt to excuse them. And this in turn for reasons which have less to do with honor or honesty on their part than with, on the one hand, a secret fear of what they themselves might be or might be construed as being and, on the other, an often barely repressed smugness and sense of superiority. 52. Both the good and the gold are malleable metals, and both can be easily counterfeited. 53. Everything past becomes in some sense contemporary. 54. A. Why are old people so anxious to tell you their age? B. Because they want to turn this negative into a positive. 55. What we truly love is what is closest to us, be it our beliefs, our feelings, our hopes, our needs, or other people. 56. Party politics is a lot of imperfect players pointing out in imperfect ways the imperfections of their opponents. 57. Those who condemn hate so hatefully should look into, but they never do, their own hearts. 58. Wine to vinegar, that's what life is, that's what love is, oh God. 59. In childhood we are immersed in the present. In youth we are drunk with it. In later years, we fill it with all our plans and projects. And in the final years, we stuff our past into it. 60. In politics one inevitably adopts the policy of thinking the best about one's own side and the worst about the other. 61. Just as one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, so one man's journalist is another man's propagandist. 62. Get back to yourself if you want to know the truth of things. After all, there may be some small corner where you will find, however hidden, a doubt, a division, a renegade element, truly in line with what you think. 63. Flight of fancy, when we, the whole of humanity, that is, find some way of proceeding that goes beyond the one of routinely thinking, morally, politically, and culturally speaking, the best of ourselves and the worst of our enemies, there will be the coming of some practice, principle, or passion into the world almost divine as a human possibility. Needless to say, it will have to do what has never been done before, subvert all forms of the will to power. High or low, weak or strong, justified or not, all manifestations of this drive must become the opposite of our virtue. In this way, all strife will end if not all struggle, as the sun sets on our tumultuous spiritual life. 64. The most common vice is counterfeiting virtue. 65. To state the matter generally, war constitutes the best part of history but not the best part of our lives. 66. People often think about a matter to come up with an opinion on it so that they then don't have to think about it. 67. What is the game of truth? It is the game that, ironically enough, allows systematic error, deception, and falsehood to play their part, so that this much-valued and many-sided activity, vast in its implications, full of plans, projects, programs, quests, discoveries, claims, schemes, and illusions, can go on indefinitely, putting into play all that matters more in the long run: interest, passion, adventure, inspiration, hope, belief, direction, commitment, etc., than final answers. 68. What is the game of truth? It is the play of truth in the finite, its appearance, presentation, verification, authorization, and codification, while partaking of the infinite where none of these operations have a beginning or end. 69. What is the game of truth? It is the game that forever conjures up the belief in imperishable truths even though these truths, insofar as they belong to this world, can only be written down on perishable material. In other words, if the parchment is destroyed, these truths are supposed to endure, be it in the mind of God, be it in some other form, be it in a universe that is considered to be, although scientific theory now challenges this, eternal. 70. Truth is idealized as something stationary or static whereas all the evidence, historical, empirical, or otherwise, shows it to be constantly in motion. However, certain elements, moving much more slowly, give the appearance of being fixed. 71. When the claim to truth is also the claim to goodness, to the highest levels of ethics, morality, justice, wisdom, and even holiness, there is this paradoxical and often horrifying result: little tolerance for opposing claims. 72. Capital punishment, to think that everyone has this hanging over their head. 73. Being quick to condemn others is a sure sign of someone who would no sooner confess his sins in public, bare his soul to the world, than be condemned as he himself condemns. Being quick to condemn others is a sure sign, in other words, of the hypocrite that, to some degree or other, exists in all of us. 74. A thing not fully known, which at bottom is the nature of all things, is open to so many possible interpretations that, when someone says that such and such an interpretation is the correct one and, being the only correct one, therefore a fact, he is surely the hero of the day but the defeated champion of tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. 75. Lead the most glorious life imaginable, leave a monument of whatever kind, and rest assured that someone will come along one day and piss on it. 76. Everybody says they want peace and not war. And yet everybody reads the newspaper or watches TV looking for what? Peace. 77. Peace, among other things, can be boring. War, among other things, can be exciting. Need it be added that boredom and excitement have little to do with morality? 78. When war offers a prize to a people, it is generally heralded. It will likely be deemed good not only by bringing certain advantages but also by adhering to some moral principle. Precisely here, however, is the fig leaf for much that would otherwise be called evil. 79. Always the same. No matter how successful the life, the sad ending. 80. One of the most offensive epithets there is, however common it may be, is not in the slightest way racist, sexist, ageist, elitist, or even speciesist. There is something remarkable about how this term, reductive not only with respect to the anatomy, is able to span the personal and the universal. However, if there is something less than universal about this word, some prejudice, in other words, it would have to be the rather bizarre one of negatively characterizing everything except the simplest forms of life. 81. Personhood seems to be so important, what could be more important? Until one thinks of all the people who have lived and died since the beginning of time and now are completely forgotten. 82. Personhood is the gift of the moment, irrespective of the person who gives it, past or present, real or imagined. 83. Suppose all thought, even the greatest, amounts to having a prejudice of one kind or another. The only remedy then, it seems, would be to have one prejudice countering another prejudice in a repeated, diverse, and wide-ranging way. But then, happy thought, isn't this precisely what is going on in a world of free thought each and every day? 84. An aphorism wants to be both understood and not understood, understood by the most sensitive ears, not understood by anything less. 85. Just as a poem, an aphorism probably won't mean much unless it comes close to one's own thoughts and sensibilities, in which case it is like a piece of coal turning into a diamond. 86. An aphorism, if it's to have the deepest view or widest outlook, must leave moralising to others. 87. Few arguments are won in the long run by mocking, vilifying, or intimidating those with a different point of view, but, in the short term, it must be very effective because it's done all the time. 88. If one gets off to a bad start, one is usually not in the race. In certain respects, this is as true today as it was at any time. However, in a number of parts of the world, both in the distant and not so distant past, if one got off to a bad start in life, one was, in a manner of speaking, not even in the human race. 89. Feelings. Feelings. To think that something so fleeting can, by shaking us to the core, draw the thinnest of lines between the most exuberant life and stone-cold death. 90. Being humorous is the risk of either offending some or many or entertaining few or none at all. Sometimes these two risks can be taken without the slightest problem, other times it's a disaster. 91. One should consider the possibility, however outrageous this may seem, that, morally speaking, we are all at the same level when all elements and circumstances not in our control are factored in. 92. Getting old is either a complete retreat from the field or a constant struggle to remain relevant. 93. One sometimes gets the impression that life was made for the young and that everything else is a mere backdrop or secondary affair. 94. Suppose there are an infinite number of universes just as there are an infinite number of stars in the heavens. What then? For one thing, it seems that, with a corresponding number of worlds, our poor little planet wouldn't be that unique. It wouldn't be the place that it more or less is now, that is, this orbiting spherical body so teeming with life that, in the face of such a miracle, it is often said, well, there may or there may not be others like it. No, however unique a jewel it is in our universe, it would be but one of an infinite number of such jewels. It would be in a scheme that goes beyond any scheme, a universe that goes beyond any universe, a totality that goes beyond all theories treating the universe as if it were a backyard or even some open field. 95. When the ancient Egyptians built tombs for their kings, did they have any feeling or suspicion apart from their belief in the afterlife? But this would have been sacrilegious. They were constructing time capsules. 96. Perhaps, in a manner of speaking, the individual has always been a hyped-up affair. After all, under the aspect of eternity, what is really significant and worthy of worship is this matrix in which individuals can flower up over and over. 97. What a strange thing. When we are with convivial company on a celestial night, the conversation with close ones seems more real than the stars. 98. Words, words, words. We take them like air and water, without a thought, and yet they're absolutely essential to what we are. 99. All political struggle has the characteristic of raising the rightness of its position, for, being warlike, it must fashion suitable weapons, to the status of a virtually untouchable ideal. 100. If it is the case that, even in science, there can never be an account that is absolutely complete, that gives the full measure of all things, then how much more this must be the case, at least for those of us who are not religious, in everything that doesn't quite qualify as science.